Hello. This video is going to cover how to set up your sensors on the Wyebot dashboard. So when you receive your sensors, the first step is going to be, of course, to get them online. Now, this is typically a very simple process. You just plug them into a switch port that receives DHCP, PoE, and internet access. And then the sensor is going to automatically reach out to our cloud servers and come online on your dashboard. So you should see them as active. Now, if you have any trouble bringing them online, I encourage you to check out our Getting Started guide, which is available under our help documentation. So we see here this guide actually includes guided troubleshooting for any issues you have with bringing the sensor online. Also, if your firewall or your policy is not to just give us open internet access, you want to restrict the endpoints we can reach. Well, here's those ports and protocols that we need in order to operate. So once you bring the sensors online, I encourage you to think about how you want the sensors to be deployed. So what I mean by that is you can actually set up multiple locations on the dashboard if you want. In the use case of these locations, and these are essentially like groups of the sensors, right? So you'd have different top level views and different kind of configuration groups, which is useful for some reasons. So let's just say in the K through 12 environment, you may have an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, and you want to set up a different location for each building so you can have X number of sensors at each building. And when you do that, you're going to have a different SSID configuration per location. You can have different sets of network tests per location. And there are some features we have to help you ease that. You can copy test between locations as needed, which we cover in another video. And also, if you need to, you can synchronize the SSIDs. So if you have one set of SSIDs that's the same throughout your campus and you want to kind of keep it maintained like that, you can use this feature here. So if I click on a conference location, my SSIDs, we can synchronize it with our demo location, right? So then they'll be locked up and matching. So once you have your, you've decided how you want to set those up, you can create locations under Management, Locations, add one here. So you just put the name in, the address, and then if you want, you can copy settings right off the bat, so you can just quickly get those set up without having to recreate everything manually. Now, once you have those locations set, you go to Sensors, and then you can click on whichever sensor, checkbox, move it to whichever location as you need to. So that's the locations. Now, another thing we encourage you to do is to name your sensors, okay? Because the default name is going to be a serial number, which is not going to be descriptive as to where you have the sensor installed. So if you click on the sensor config on the left here, you go to cafeteria, for example. So this is our cafeteria sensor, and that's where we named it. So you change the name up here. You can also add on notes. So if you want to, put notes about where the sensor was previously installed or anything like that, go ahead, add that there, as well as a photo, right? So you can take a picture of where the sensor is installed, and then there's really no ambiguity as far as where to find it. Also on the screen, we have network options. So here you can choose how the sensor gets its IP addressing, how it connects out to our cloud. Now the default behavior is to use the wired Ethernet port on the sensor and to obtain an IP address via DHCP. Now this default behavior is actually what we recommend because it allows the sensor to measure DHCP response time when it runs network tests using its Ethernet port. However, if you want to use a static IP, you can click Use the following IP address, and then you can set that IP there as well. Now, you can also change the connection type to wireless. Doing this will allow you to have the sensor connect via the Wi-Fi back to our cloud, and then gather some information with the other two radios. The sensor is a 3-radio device, so one of them, the one that's usually used for network tests, can be used to give you a wireless backhaul. Now, we don't actually recommend enabling this unless you need to, just because when you turn that radio on to give us connection back to the Wi-Fi, well, that's where we run our network tests. So, if it's dedicated to giving us access to our cloud, then you're not going to be able to run any network tests anymore. So something to consider. Again, I would recommend, if possible, to use DHCP on the wired port. And for static IP addressing, check the management sensors here. We have these MAC addresses, and rather than a static IP, you can do a DHCP reservation by taking the wired MAC and then using your DHCP server to assign that. So back to the screen I was on here. Now we click on the radio tab, and we see options for radio 1 and radio 2. Now these are the two radios that are used to continuously monitor a couple of dedicated Wi-Fi channels. Now the default behavior is to look at 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So what we do is when we come online, we look for the closest AP and we latch onto those channels. And then what we're going to do, let's say you're using RRM and the APs are automatically switching their channel, based on the environment, right? So we'll actually follow those channel switches, assuming you have channels set to auto. So the default behavior is typically, what you want. However, in certain circumstances, let's just say you've disabled 2.4 throughout your enterprise, right? So you don't even have 2.4 anymore. So what you can do is actually monitor dual 5 gig if you want. So you want to look at two 5 gig channels, you can set this to auto. Then we automatically pick up two closest 5 gigs, and then you get more information out of the sensor that way. Also, you can statically set the channel that's being monitored. In certain circumstances, that can be necessary. Let's just say there's an area, it's not right next to where you have the sensor deployed. It's maybe the next room over that's got a different AP. And you want to capture all the information from that access point. So what you can do is find out the channels that AP is using and then have our channels set to match that. Okay, so then it might pick up whatever the problem it is you're trying to identify. But again, I would recommend leaving this on auto in general, just because as your APs do switch their channels, you're going to want us following those channel switches without you having to go and reconfigure that yourself. All right, now we'll click on the Info tab. Here we see information about the status of the sensor, which can be useful a little bit in your troubleshooting. So for example, if you run the speed test and you see the speed's always below 100 megabits per second, well, it could be that the link speed we're coming up at is 100 meg, right? I mean, bad cables or old switches, tend to have that problem. We give you the PoE level. So AT is PoE plus, AF is standard PoE. Uptime, software version. So just useful information in here. Now, if we click on the maintenance tab, you have, some administrative options such as rebooting the sensor if you ever need to do that. You can factory reset, which is going to clear all the data, reset the sensor back to, wired DHCP, and give you kind of a clean slate. Also, if you want to clear data without changing your network settings on the sensor, we have that option as well. So, if you're moving the sensor around, you want a fresh set of data, you have these choices. So yeah, that's the sensor setup. Hopefully a pretty simple process for you, but if you have any questions, again, I'd encourage you to check our documentation. This has lots of articles that help you identify the problems and fix them. Even some articles about specific wireless vendors if you're curious about that. And then beyond that, any other questions, email us, support@wyebot.com. We're happy to reach out, or we're happy to answer any questions you have and hopefully get everything sorted out for you. So thanks so much for watching, and you have a good day.